Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bella Gamer, and we're back with another archetype, and this one's an interesting one. Honestly, I really don't know how to classify this one because, on one hand, it has all the appearances of a combat archetype, but in practice, it's something completely different. Today, we're going to be talking about the Gladiator, the showboat of the arena, the one who will take the show, make it look good, and make Mortal Kombat appealing to the crowd, and is more concerned about putting on a good show rather than putting down their foes. This is going to be an interesting one, but before we get into it, I'm going to leave you with this question. If a gladiator is a gladiator, but no one is around to watch them, are they still a gladiator? We'll find out here in a little bit. So let's start with the dedication, shall we? The gladiator dedication has only the prerequisite of the impressive performance skill feat, which all that it requires is that you're trained in performance, and it allows you to use performance rather than diplomacy to make an impression. This is the first and maybe only archetype of its kind to require an actual skill feat, which is kind of strange. Now, I do believe that at level 2 you can get a skill feat, and thus you can pick up the Gladiator dedication at this level. Otherwise, you'd have to play something like a human that can pick up this skill feat, or you can use one of the various backgrounds that may have impressive performance as a part of its background. In fact, there might even be a gladiator background. Beyond that, it's really not that bad, but it's a little much. I mean, rather than just being trained in something, you need to be trained in something and also have selected a skill feat before selecting gladiator. Very strange, and it gets stranger from here. So, you become trained in gladiator lore, unless you're already trained for some reason, then you become trained in another lore of your personal choice, which is interesting. Not just any other skill, it has to be another lore skill specifically. And on top of that, at the start of combat encounters, you get a number of temp HP equal to your level if you have spectators, which is a very important and very interesting part of this particular dedication, but there's a way to work around it. Spectators, by my assumption, are non-participants. I think that's exactly what makes a spectator specifically. And I don't like this word because it just really doesn't do anything. How is a GM supposed to infer a spectator? Is it just someone who sees what's going on? Then you always have spectators, and it's weird to make that even a requirement. I believe a spectator has to be a non-combatant performer or observer, or someone who is not in the current combat. So your allies could be spectators if you decide to handle a situation by yourself. I don't know. Like I said, there is a way around this, 100% guaranteed, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But having spectators, you get temp HP equal to your level for a minute, and you are allowed to use your performance as your initiative roll, which is really interesting, but really, really good, and actually something even the bard doesn't get. And honestly, this whole archetype sounds like a bard subclass archetype. Really, it's so bizarre. Performance is a huge part of this, so going forward there's going to be more performance, and if you want to take gladiator, you gotta be trained. One thing I do like about the Gladiator is it has a skill feat at level 4, which means you can get done with Gladiator's requirements of having 2 additional feats right at level 4. You can select the Fancy Moves skill feat, which allows you to use your performance rather than intimidation to demoralize. This is making performance a very omni scale, and honestly that might not be a bad thing. If there's a lot of things you want your character to do and you don't want to invest too many things like diplomacy or intimidation, Well, you can do it through this archetype, which is very interesting. And because it's a skill feat, you can select this on top of any of the other level 4 feats that are with it. And then you can select at level 6 a different archetype if you so choose, especially if you're using the bonus archetype rule. This is a really, really good setup overall for the Gladiator. Next up is one of their level 4 feats, and this is Play the Crowd. And I'm going to look it out over here, so I apologize if I'm not looking at the screen, but there's a lot going on. So it's a reaction you get that has a concentrate trait, and it's triggered when an enemy is reduced to 0 hit points during a non-trivial combat encounter, and you're the one to do so. When you do so, you attempt a performance check versus the DC determined by the GM, but it's typically your standard DC for your level, or the DC to make an impression on the spectators, whichever is higher. And I'm going to guarantee you right here, right now, if they're spectators, it's going to be based on your level, but I do like the idea that if you just happen to have, say, like a dragon is watching you and watching everything you're doing, your DC is going to be inadvertently really high. And I like the idea of the stage fright your character might have because of the situation, because you just happen to have some high-level character watching what's going on, which I think is hilarious. But anyway, so when you make this check, on a success, you gain one of the following benefits, and on a critical success, you gain 2. One is temporary hit points equal to your character level that lasts for a minute, same as the beginning of the encounter for the dedication itself, which is very, very solid. Next is a +1 circumstance bonus to AC until the end of your next turn. Really good, and as a reaction, if you're a class that doesn't use reactions, a very solid get, especially because all it requires is that you down an enemy with 0 hit points. Doesn't matter how far, doesn't matter anything. As long as you have spectators who see you do it, you can get a bonus to your AC, which can be really good. Or the last one, a +1 circumstance bonus to your next attack roll before the end of your next turn. Circumstance bonuses to attack rolls are actually somewhat uncommon. Most of them are status, though there are definitely some circumstance bonus ones for sure. Still, this is a very good buff to your damage overall and is very solid. Now, this does require you down an enemy, so it's really good to use on the various mook enemies that might be in your encounters, but it does require you have a spectator, and it does use a reaction. This is good for some classes, but not as good for some other classes. I would have preferred this to have been a once per turn reaction rather than reaction, because say you use a reaction to attack of opportunity and kill an enemy, I feel like you should still be able to in that moment. But overall, it's not a bad feat overall. And if you don't use reactions, this just gives you a benefit for killing enemies. So it's pretty good. The other level 4 feat is an interesting one, and one that's very, very particular and very, very niche. It's called Stage Fighting. And what it does is you no longer suffer the -2 penalty to striking an enemy non-lethally with a weapon that does not have the non-lethal trait. That's it. So it just essentially gives all your weapons the non-lethal trait, which is okay, but very situational. Now, in some settings, this might actually work, and having a way to take someone alive is never really bad, especially if you don't have to suffer a penalty in order to do so, meaning that removes that difficulty. Would I use a feat on it? I don't know, but if you're the kind of character who wants to take prisoners, this is a really good feat, actually. So, I don't know. Not bad for a level 4 feat. Next up is performative weapon training, and what it does, and I'm going to check it out over here, you become trained with the bow staff, dueling cape, spiked chain, sword cane, and whip. And whenever you have a class feature that would increase your proficiency to expert or higher, you also improve your proficiency with these weapons. This is completely useless for any martial character who really would want to take this, especially now since the new remaster project is coming out. The rogue is going to get proficiency in all martial weapons. So even the rogue, which normally had the biggest struggle when it came to proficiencies, is now useless for. Now, if you're playing a bard, for instance, or maybe even a war priest, this might actually come in more handy. It really depends on the situation. It's an okay feat if that's what you're going for, but that's, again, a very niche situation. So Again, an okay feat overall, I suppose. Call Your Shots is just an addition to the Play to the Crowd feat that we selected earlier, and it gives you one additional option. What it allows you to do is when you down an enemy and you make your performance check on success or critical success, you can select a creature within 30 feet and they become frightened 1. This effect has the emotion, fear, mental, and visual traits, so any enemy who might be immune to any of those won't be affected. But overall, not bad. I don't know if it's worth a whole feat to get one additional thing. Now, it does just make an enemy frightened 1, so it's a good way to make an enemy frightened who might have an abnormally high will save that your intimidation or performance, I guess in this case, wouldn't work on. But a whole feat to just make an enemy frightened 1 when you down an enemy, I don't know. Again, it's kind of useless in my opinion, but it has its benefits, I suppose. If you got extra feats lying around, why not? All right, so I did mention earlier how to get around the spectator thing. As well, there are 2 additional feats that were added thanks to the Firebrand book. And I'm going to get into all of this here in just a moment, but first, I would like you all to appease the subscribe button down here to help the channel out so you can see more videos like this, see more archetypes like this, and overall to help the Pathfinder 2e community, as no one puts out as much Pathfinder content as I do on a daily basis. And I do it because I enjoy the game, obviously, but I also want to do it for people. So if more people want it, it makes me feel better about getting it done. So appease that subscribe button, and let's go ahead and just get on with it. So how do you get around the spectator situation? It's really easy, actually, and I absolutely love the fix. You hire a hireling to just be your fan. That's right. You hire someone to follow you around so you can use your exploits in front of them to gain the benefits from this archetype. I love it because it's so just cartoonish or anime, and it makes those characters in various media who are like, I can't do it unless I'm performing for a crowd. Makes sense, like in a mechanical way. And there's really, it's not even that kind of a cheese. I mean, you're literally paying to win with this feature. I mean, to get your level as temp HP at the beginning of combat just because you hired someone to follow you around for like a few copper a day. And I mean, you're adventurer rich, right? You can hire some schmuck to follow you around for a very measly amount of money to get all your benefits and all your reactions. So as niche of the situation of having spectators might be, why not pay for friends? It's really silly, but it's something interesting about the Gladiator, and I love it. All right, so the first of the 2 feats added from the Firebrands is called Living for the Applause. It's another reaction, and I'm going to look it over here because there's a lot going on. So it's a once per day thing. You need to be a member of the Firebrands to gain access to this one. And it has the trigger of you would be reduced to 0 hit points, but not immediately killed during a combat encounter, and you have spectators, your paid friends. So what it allows you to do is you just don't go down. You stay up with 1 HP, but your wounded condition does increase by 1, so it's not 100% for free. The good thing about this and the really cool thing about this is when this happens, so this automatically just works once per day as a reaction. You can avoid going down as long as you have spectators. A immensely powerful effect, but it has an additional effect. In addition, you can attempt a performance check. The DC is determined by the GM, and it's the standard, level or spectators, so hopefully no dragons around. And what happens is on success, the crowd erupts in applause and cheers at your comeback, which I like this as a compulsory effect. You roll this and they do. So if the dragon's there and you succeed, the dragon starts cheering you on. It's really funny. This motivates you. Fearing a finishing blow, you get a +1 circumstance bonus to your AC until the end of your next turn. And if you get a critical success, This is juicy, all right? On a critical success, you don't expend your daily use of living for the applause, and you can use the reaction an additional time on the same day. Now, obviously, since it's a reaction, you can't do it until your next turn comes around, so hopefully they don't just instantly finish you off. But yeah, this is a really fun way to have a near immortal character as long as you're crushing your performance checks, which, if you're heavy investing in performance, it might actually be pretty easy to do. And there's so many things out there that give performance boosts, like item bonuses or status bonuses from spells or abilities, even circumstance bonuses. You could very easily make yourself really hard to take down. Sure, it's once per round, but it would not be that bad. And not only that, but a consistent boost to your AC as well. This is an absurdly powerful feat, and honestly just makes Gladiator really powerful. It's the only archetype I see here on the list that has it, so living for the applause, baby. That's a killer feat. The next one up, and the final one here for the list today, is Bigot Debut, which is a free action that you use when you roll initiative, and it's actually shared between Gladiator and the celebrity. So the trigger being, well, you roll for initiative. You must be a member of the Firebrands to take this feat. Of course, of course. It's a level 10 feat, so not too high. And it's as gaudy as the rest of Gladiator. So what it does is when you roll initiative, you come out with either some new flair, striking a pose, coming up with a nice quick. They make a will save against your class DC or spell DC, whichever is higher. I really wish it was performance DC because that would be hilarious. But no, so they make a will save versus your class DC or spell DC, and on a failure, the enemy is overcome with its anticipation for what you'll do next and will become stunned 1 until your first action on your first turn. And not only that, as your first action on your turn, you can draw or stow an item of light bulk as a free action. If this item is a small garment or accessory, such as a fan or a pair of gloves, a wine glass, you can gain a +1 circumstance bonus on charisma-based skill checks until the end of your turn. So you come out and you whip out your wine glass and you're like, ah, a nice Chardonnay. I guess I'll save this for later. You put it in your bag and the enemies are like, oh my god, what a fancy dude. And they become stunned 1. Now, it's enemies who can see you. There is no range requirement, no spectator requirement. So any enemy that can visually see you, that it says enemies who can see you must attempt a will save. You could stun a whole battlefield with how outrageous your character is. And if you're a bard, again, Gladiator is a subclass of bard. This just archetype just feels subclassy for the bard. With a high spell DC, you could stun a lot of enemies by just being super extra at the beginning of combat. I don't know how I feel about Gladiator. It's such a ridiculous archetype, but it's just got a lot of fun in it. You gotta admit, it has some flair. But that's gonna be it for me. How'd you guys like Gladiator? Let me know down in the comments. I think it's a goofy one, but at the same time, there's just so many little things about it that I thoroughly enjoy. Paying some dude to be your fan and watch you do things so you get the benefits of your feats. Your whole thing is just looking as extra as possible on the battlefield and just forcing performance to do so many checks. I mean, if you're a bard, this is amazing, but this could give a lot of flair for even a fighter, honestly. Even if not all the feats may apply to you, there's just some really good ones here. There's a lot of bangers for sure. So, yeah, let me know. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.